G'day and welcome back to this episode. Really pleased to share this one with you. This is actually a video lesson inside my blurry to tack sharp photos 4-step system. It's all about ISO and shutter speed on a smartphone. Now I know when you start playing around with smartphones, the technical side of it, you don't really need to consider it that much because they're amazing in auto. Even just using some of those simple techniques of tapping the screen, swiping to make them brighter and darker. Or some phones now actually have exposure compensation, so you can actually deliberately always have it set a little bit darker, which is fantastic. So ISO and shutter, why am I talking about it in this course? Is because this course is all about squeezing as much detail as you can out of the phone, and to do that, manual control is the best way. And I use Adobe Lightroom in this video lesson to really demonstrate what they are and how you can take manual control of it. Best part of this is I go right into detail and explain what ISO is, because most photographers out there have this misconception, and there's so much misinformation out there that everybody's kind of, back in the days of analog film, what ISO was then is not what ISO is now. Even like going back more than a decade where we transitioned to just digital photography, we've been getting it wrong for all that time. So if nothing else out of this video lesson, you're going to get a better understanding of what ISO is, that then you can go to your photography mate and say, no, you got it all wrong. This is what it is. So without further ado, let's play the intro music and get straight into it. So the big question is this: how do smartphone photo enthusiasts like us become that creative and confident photographer we desire and deserve to be, creating those beautiful, impactful photos? This podcast will give you the answers. I'm Mike, and welcome to the Smartphone Photography Club. We're going to get technical in this one. I know you're used to me being, an advocate of being jargon-free and keeping it as simple as we can, but we need to get into a bit of the technical side here so that we can squeeze as much as we can out of your existing smartphone. So previous experience, in the last lesson we went into manual control. We use manual focus using the Adobe Lightroom app, and if I bring the screen up here just really quickly, you can see here, here's the passion fruit flower again. And I've set this up now a little bit different actually. I've put the macro lens on the 2x the teleconverter lens, and so now we're getting extra optical zoom as well as the macro zoom, or macro features. So getting really close this one for the demonstration. What you're going to learn is, what is ISO? Now 90% of professional photographers out there, can you believe it? Professional photographers don't understand what ISO is. So you're going to be able to test them. You'll be able to test just how much theory the photographers around you know, who say, oh, you're just a smartphone photographer, you're just a hobbyist. If you're going to know something they don't. So that's really exciting. Why we're doing this, the reason why we're doing this and why it applies to sharpness in your images is that by manipulating the ISO and the shutter, we're going to have the most clean, vibrant, detailed image that we can achieve. Now, playing around with ISO and shutter out in the field, taking photos of flowers or people running around at your kids at a sporting event or something like that, it's not practical, okay? 95% of my photos I shoot on auto, because I know if I've got it in focus, then the rest I can fix up in editing. So this is really for setup shots, or if you just want to have more creative control and squeeze as much as you can out of this. Low light, nighttime photography, manual control is fantastic. So that's why we do this. The benefit is a nice clean photo. So the tool we're using, yes, is Adobe Lightroom. The reason for that is it's available on Android and iPhone. You may have an Android that has a Pro mode, and in that Pro mode you can access these features as well. So for simplicity and to ensure that I can help you no matter what you've got, that's why I'm using this app. So I'm going to refer to my notes here because I don't want to miss out here, and I want to try and explain this to you properly. So what is ISO? It's not an acronym. A lot of people out there think that ISO means International Standards Organization, which it doesn't. On their website, I've got a quote here from the International Organization of Standardization, which is actually iOS. It's not ISO, but anyway, it says, because International Organization for Standardization would have different acronyms in different languages, iOS being English, or ION in French for Organisation International Denormalization, our founders decided to give it a short form ISO. ISO is derived from the Greek isos, meaning equal. Whatever the country, whatever the language, we're always ISO. So the word means equal. It's standard. It's standardization. So it's standardization. It's not an acronym for these guys. So where it comes from is from the old film days where film sensitivity had an ISO rating. So it had an ISO rating of 100, 200, 400, 800, 1600. So that meant that no matter who the manufacturer was of that film, whether it was Kodak or Fujifilm, show my age now, aren't I? Referring to all these. But basically, ISO is the standard film sensitivity to light. So you open up the back of the camera, put your roll of film in there, close it. Don't let any more light in there. We've all done that. We've opened it up and, no, because the light in there destroys most of your photos, if not all of them. So you slam that shut, and then as the film goes around and does its thing, the light comes through the front of the camera, blah, 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 blah. It's sensitive to that light. So it's sensitivity. So it's standardization of that. All right. The other misconception out there, or theory that people have, and I had it for so long myself, is that especially when we moved to digital, I thought that it was the sensitivity of the sensor, which it's not. It's not the sensitivity of the sensor. The camera sensor consists of tiny little pixels, little dots in there. All right. That's if it's a 12 megapixel camera, it has 12 million little dots in there. All right. You ready for this? Light enters the lens, and every little pixel inside there measures the intensity of the light by counting the photons reaching the pixel. The charge of the photons changes the voltage in each pixel. The voltage values are recorded by the camera. The raw data is a collection of recorded voltage values from all 12 million pixels. This is the one that's most important for us. The amplification of signal happens after the data was collected by applying the gain, which is like a little dial on your hi-fi system, your stereo. Digital camera, including smartphones, should be using the term gain, not ISO. So basically, as the light's coming in, it's recording the photons, it's recording a value, an electronic value, it's keeping all this data. A little processor in there, the ISP, the image signal processor, is taking all that information. And then if the image is not quite bright, it's too dark, whatever, we're applying the gain. So when we change the ISO, we're amplifying or decreasing that information so the image becomes brighter or darker. So in a nutshell, ISO in a digital camera or a smartphone is basically all it is taking that information and amplifying it or decreasing it. That's it. It's not. So when we change the value, we're not physically changing anything. We're not changing the opening of the lens or anything funky. The information is coming in. It's quantifiable. It's a quantity. It's fixed. It's locked. We can't control that. It comes in. It records it as data, and then we're either amplifying it to make it brighter or we're decreasing it to make it darker. All right, we got through that. So here we go. Noise. Any sort of sensor that receives or transmits an electronic signal has some sort of noise. If you think of a stereo, we have the hissing sound, don't we? So we're tuning in, trying to get in another station, and you get the hissing sound. Otherwise, it would just be a station, quiet, a station, a quiet, but it's not. It's that noise. It's the hissing sound. Similar to this. Okay, so the higher frequency we go, or the higher amplification we go, the more image noise that's in there, the electronic noise that's in there is going to be amplified, and it's going to be more and more brighter specks of grain, salt and pepper. Okay, still with me? Great. From a practical point of view, all that means is the lower the ISO, the less of that noise that you're going to have. Okay, the higher you go to make the image brighter, you're going to have more brighter artifacts. All right. Okay, just make sure that I've got here. The reason for the lower setting is you capture a higher range of light and dark, more vibrant colors. Okay. Now, I'm not used to getting really technical with the smartphone. The other factor with the exposure, what we call exposure, is how bright the image is the shutter. Now, on here, it's referred to as seconds. Okay. So what that is is with the old cameras, you'd have a little curtain in front of the sensor and it would open up, let the light in, and then shut. So if it's a fast one, it'll go like that, let a little bit of light in. If it's a long one, so for night time, when you want to get those really cool street, the lights of the tail lights of the car going past, you want to leave it open and then shut it. So open for longer so the light will go through and be recorded. Okay. With a smartphone, it's a little bit different. It's electronic. We don't have a mechanical shutter like we used to. What it's called is an electronic rolling shutter. Okay, so it scans. So the sensor scans from the top to the bottom. So it's a rolling shutter. Okay, works the same way. Slow it down. You have more information, more light. Speed it up, and it works exactly the same way. If you have a fast one, it'll freeze action. If you have a slow one, the action will be slowed down, it'll be blurred. All right? The reason why we're mentioning this and talking about this inside a sharpening course is because if we have a fast camera, then it means that if the flower's moving, it'll be okay. If the camera's moving, it'll be okay because it's nice and fast. All right, so here I have my manual focus all set up. That's all pre-done. So ISO, similar to before, it starts off at auto, and then we move our finger up, and you can change that. Okay, so the higher we go, the more gain we're applying. So we're amplifying that signal, the original signal. Now the reason why that hasn't increased in brightness is because we're setting the ISO, but the seconds, the shutter, is still on automatic. So if we change one and the other is on automatic, it will go, okay, all bright. Well, we better make the shutter faster. So it's brighter, it's getting brighter. It's too much. So we need the shutter to be really fast so that it doesn't let in too much light. All right. Now you can see there, down the seconds. So we're at 133, 100, how am I going to say that? Normally it's 1/60th, but what is 133? Is it thirds or 130? Anyway, I digress. So you can see there, by boosting we're amplifying the ISO, we're causing it to take a really fast photo. So that's really good if you've got an action shot, like a bee buzzing around this flower. If there was a bee, then that could be really handy in this lighting scenario that we have here. Okay, now if you watch now as I reduce this down, okay, and you look at the seconds, okay, I want to go as low as I can, 25, because that is going to give me the most vibrant colors. It's going to give me the least amount of noise, which is fantastic. But you can see there, seconds, we're now at 1/4 of a second. So that is really, really slow shutter. In this scenario, the flower won't move, the tripod won't move. It's perfect. We can take that photo. There we go. To make that even better, we're going to set that on a timer and then press that, and there's no movement of me touching it either. So if I go into ISO, I change that to auto. Now I'm going to touch on seconds, the shutter speed, and now the shutter speed, there might be a bee flying around. Okay, and I want to go, let's say 1/500th of a second, which is pretty fast. Okay, ISO, that's gone and maxed out because it's automatic. So ISO is automatic. Now if I bring that down, okay, actually I'll go auto. ISO is on auto, fantastic. And as I'm moving that, you can see the ISO value is changing, but it maxes out. Once it's maxed out, okay, we can't change it anymore, then the image just gets darker and darker and darker. So we want to get the nice fast shutter speed where we still have, we can still see what's going on in there. Still level of brightness in the image is good. Okay, so in these conditions, we can't take a really super fast photo without the image going dark. If I was outside chasing bees around, then I could have a shutter speed of 1/800th of a second, really fast. ISO, depending on the amount of ambient light going on around me, will adjust automatically, which is really cool because then what it is it's actually shutter priority mode. When the ISO is on auto and I'm adjusting this, it means that the priority is whatever I set the shutter speed. So if I want to have a handheld photo, okay, I'm not using the tripod, I would say 1/50th, 1/60th, that's about where you can get it, okay? In a low light situation like this, I could take a photo at that speed and I won't have the camera shake, because that's the killer. We covered that in another lesson. So just to recap, ISO is not an acronym. It's not the sensitivity of the sensor. It is actually the amplification of all those photons firing, giving electronic values to the sensor. So all the raw data of light that's coming in there, whether amplifying it or decreasing it. Amplify it too much, we get noise. Decrease it, we have less noise, more clarity. Shutter speed, nice and fast. Sharp, quick in focus. When I say in focus, no movement, no blur. If it's too slow, then we get some blur in the image. So that's pretty much wrapped it up. One last thing, can you tell the difference between it being out of focus and being blurred? If it's out of focus, then there might be one part of the image that's in focus. If it's blur, if it's movement blur, there won't be any part of the image that's in focus. So just a quick tip to round that up. So thank you for pursuing this and keep going with this. I know that was a little bit technical, but hopefully that little recap at the end kind of simplified it for you, and you can see the benefit. It's a balancing act, isn't it? Get the ISO as low as you can, get the shutter speed as fast as you can, and try and get the balance between the two so that there's no movement and it's a nicely balanced light and dark image. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. So how did you find that video lesson inside the course on ISO and shutter? I know I got technical, didn't I? I did warn you at the start of this that I get technical, and you probably don't need to consider it 90% of the time. You have to worry about it, but I think it really helps to understand how your phone responds to light and how extra light can make a difference and how you can capitalize on that and actually squeeze that little bit more resolution out of your phone. So again, this video lesson was brought to you by the Blurry to Tack Sharp Photos, the 4-step system. The link is below. Thank you again for watching and listening, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.